always involve a winner and a loser. The nice thing about sort of framing the question that way is that it's easy to see just by analyzing the nature of free exchange that it's win-win. I learned this in the 6th grade. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, which is kind of a hot place most of the time, but then there'll be ice storms randomly, you know, that come from New Mexico. But you get a warning the day before that they're coming. And so I assume my teacher had heard that there was a sort of ice storm coming, so she'd gotten these toys from the dollar store and showed up and passed them all out to us, different toy to each kid, silly putty and paddle ball and Barbie trading cards, stuff like that. So she passed them all out, 25 different toys to all the kids, and said, okay, now look around and you compare your toy to all the other toys. And I want you to write down on a piece of paper how much you like it between 1 and 10. It's totally up to you. Right? To simplify it, imagine this is 5 rows of 5 kids, all right? I didn't count, so I don't remember that. But so we all looked around, wrote down, you know, how much we liked the toy, and then she had us call out the number. We called it out, and then she added up the total, and she wrote it on the board. So it's like the sum of our subjective evaluation of our situation. Said, okay, now you can freely trade with anyone else in your row. So then we all had 4 potential trading partners, and some you could maybe trade even more than once. And so there was some trading that took place, but there wasn't that much activity. Said, okay, now write down how much you like the toy in your hand between 1 and 10. So again, we wrote it down. We had to call out the number. She added up the total. She wrote it on the board. And what happened? Number went up. Right? Now remember that. Nothing new was added to the system. The number went up. All right? And she said, now, second round, you can freely trade with anyone else in the classroom. Now, if you know anything about Metcalfe's law that has to do with networking, this means that you immediately had 24 potential trading partners and then an unimaginable number of secondary and tertiary trades. So it's just total pandemonium, which is why I remember this game. I hate to say, I didn't learn the lesson at the time. It was decades later when I was working at the Acton Institute and I was working on this stuff. I thought, oh, you know, that's probably what the teacher wanted us to learn. I didn't get the point at the time. All right, so we all did lots and lots and lots and lots of trading. So finally it settles down and she says, okay, now write down how much you like the toy that you have in your hand. So of course we all did it again. We called out the number. She added up the total, wrote it on the board. The number went way up. Now what's happening there? This is a weird thing, right? Remember, nothing new was added to the system. There was an initial infusion of toys, and then all there was a system of rules set in place that prevented us from doing certain things. Right? When she said you can freely trade with anyone else in your row, that meant I couldn't threaten the little girl behind me, right? You're going to give me your toy, or you know, you're going to find something in your locker or whatever, right? That's not what it meant. It meant free on both sides. And so what that meant is a system of rules is set up that channeled certain actions so that whenever exchanges took place, they only took place if both participants perceived themselves as better off as a result of the trade. That's the nature of a free exchange. When that doesn't happen, it turns out it's not a free exchange. There's coercion or fraud or something like that. So the very nature of free exchange is a system of rules that allows for a kind of maximization of win-win interchanges. Now, there's, of course, more to the story than that. All I've talked about is the nature of free exchange. But even there, I think you ought to see that what that means is that what you could call free enterprise or economic freedom, it's actually the golden mean between the extremes. People often say, well, I want a third way between capitalism and socialism. And when you look at it, it always ends up being kind of like socialism, you know, kind of soft socialism. But that's the wrong contrast. The contrast is between anarchy on one side, in which there's no law. In anarchy, it's like Lord of the Flies. The strong prey on the weak. That's anarchy. Or statism, in which the jurisdiction of the state completely swamps and absorbs all of our activities, including our economic activity. The sweet spot is when you have the rule of law, right? People can't kill each other, they can't steal from each other, they can't defraud each other, and then that sets up the opportunities for win-win exchange. But the interesting thing is that it actually goes beyond that. And this is the final and related myth, which I call the materialist myth. And the materialist myth has to do with our understanding about the nature of wealth. And this is a belief that wealth can only be transferred from one party to another rather than created. It's a widely believed idea, even though we know this isn't really true. It's very widely, when you hear people say so-and-so got more than his fair share, right? The implication is that there's a pot of gold there, right? It's like a pie. So somebody showed up early to the party and they ate a quarter of the pie, right? And so the rest of us got small slices. That's the idea. But notice, here it's sort of like, it's a belief about the nature of wealth, that it's this fixed amount of stuff. And if some person got too much of it, that left too little for the rest of us. Right? Now, you might think that's crazy. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't get rich stealing iPods from homeless people, right? I mean, there's something else going on here. So you know this isn't true. But as Craig sort of mentioned briefly, this was actually what underlying Marx's prediction in the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto was written in 1848. The purpose of the book, so it's really just a pamphlet, was to argue that what he called capitalism, industrial capitalism is his word, would sow the seeds of its own destruction. And the reason is, he said, there are these different classes of society. There's a class that he called the bourgeoisie, or the capitalists, the people that own the factories, they own the means of production. And then there are the proletariat, or the workers, and those are the people that are paid